Let's first answer the why Maori practice the art of preserving heads. Give the cultural perspective to kick this one off, starting with the te reo or native Maori names for the practice. Toi Moko. For the benefit of overseas viewers, a moko is a traditional Maori tattoo using what you would term to be a form of chisel. Go ahead right now, wince. Indeed, it was an extremely painful process. The other name for preserved heads was or is Mokomokai. Tattoos were traditional adornments in Maori culture for both sexes. Men concentrated on a full face tattoo. Women went for chins, lips and noses. Ouch. These weren't just aesthetically pleasing designs either. Each part of the moko was representative of some part of the individual's life. Their tribe, called iwi, their position within the hegemony of the iwi, lineage, and even if they were married or single. No two moko were therefore the same. The life lesson here for anyone contemplating a Maori tribal tattoo is to do your research or end up with a tattoo that could translate as something along the lines as, "My name is Hemi, I'm from the Maniapoto, and I'm single." Your wife might have something to say about that, I would think, and your mother too. Now the who. No, not the band. The cephalic decision-making process on who had their head preserved after it been lopped off. The three main categories of Toi Moko were the heads of the vanquished, in particular someone with high status who had fallen in combat. These were often displayed on poles as a deterrence and to humiliate the conquered iwi, i.e.,
"That's your cousin over there, and don't come F with us."
The second category was a relative. Male, female and children were retained and displayed in presentation boxes which came out on special occasions. Picture your mother-in-law staring down at you from the mantelpiece. Then again, forget what I said. I don't want to traumatise viewers and them reporting the video content to YouTube. The first trade in heads began early on in Cook's second voyage when in 1770 a botanist, Joseph Banks, traded the head of a 14-year-old boy for a pair of second-hand underpants. From that moment on, a Mokomokai became a valuable trading commodity. In 1831, attempts were made at arm's length to outlaw the practice and trade. This was when New Zealand was being run out of Australia, New South Wales, and the market simply went underground. One of the books I scan-read in the Christchurch Library told of a trade occurring in the mid-1870s. The third category of Mokomokai is the one not given a lot of attention to these days. Slaves, captives. This is hardly a surprise. Mokai translates as slave. A literal translation of Mokai is tattooed slave. When preserved heads became a valuable trading position to carry on the intertribal musket wars, there were only so many heads in houses to go onto the market. Slaves were tattooed specifically to be murdered. Murdered to order could be a term accurately employed. The sellers were aware of the more popular designs which were painfully tattooed onto the victim's face, and when they were healed, their days were over. To place contemporary term in this category of a Toi Moko, replicas. There is now no way of telling today whether it is a genuine chief's or warrior's heads or a knockoff outside DNA testing. That's to say the head has the markings of X tribe and the DNA of the same X tribe. Approximately 300 to 500 Toi Moko ended up overseas. Most of them bartered to fuel the musket wars between 1810 and 1830ish. These ended up in both state and private collections in a wide range of countries. Sweden, Germany, the US and even the Channel Islands. There has been a big push lately to repatriate the Mokomokai. Before I deal with the nuts and bolts and salt and pepper shakers, let's do a quick bio on the authors. For those that like to hide on either side of the modern-day metaphorical North-South Korean border called cultural relativity, think about when you were last overseas and how you equated what you saw. Whether you were at Machu or the Eiffel Tower, your perspective was or is grounded in your background. where you came from, and your knowledge of the place you were visiting. We all see the world differently. This isn't a hard concept to grasp, even if it has become unpopular in some circles in the year 2022. Now to the two writers. First up is Edward Tregear. We are blessed not only with a photograph of the gentleman, but an autograph as well. His book, I'm paraphrasing, is called simply The Maori Race. The bloke was a prolific writer about early Maori. One of the more intriguing titles is this one, Aryan Maori. And turns out apparently Himmler was way off the track in Tibet. According to Tregear, in 1885 at least. If I get 10 positive comments here, i.e. enthusiastic response from subscribers and viewers, I'll do a read and produce a video reviewing the content. Mind you, Tregear was a surveyor and not an anthropologist. Intriguing theory nonetheless. Time now for you to see what's in your kitchen pantry. You can put to good use. And see what Eddie had to say when it came to Toi Moko. I'll be having a test at the end, by the way.
The process of preservation was as follows. The head being separated from the body, the inner portions such as the tongue, brain, eyes, etc. being extracted. The interior was then stuffed with dressed flax and the skin of the neck drawn together like the mouth of a purse. A couple of long hairs were passed through the upper eyelids and the lids were drawn down there by the hairs being tied together under the chin. This was done lest someone should be bewitched by looking into the empty eye sockets. The lips were generally fastened together with stitches, but not always. The heads were then steamed, sometimes in an ordinary earth oven, but at other times another process was followed. The skull was well wrapped in green leaves and then spiked on a stick and set in a shallow hole. Into this whole hot stones were placed and constantly renewed from others heating in a fire burning close by. A man, whose duty it was to move the stones and attend the fire, basted the heads with oils to keep them from charring with the heat. When the heads had thus been prepared, either by steaming or roasting, they were exposed alternately to the rays of the sun and the smoke of the whole wood fire. This not only tended to preserve them in the way we preserve fish, but it also delivered them from the attacks of insects. When the head was considered ready, it received its toile, the hair being oiled and fastened up into a knot, sometimes with features. If the process was properly performed, the features suffered so little that recognition of the personality of the deceased was easy. Next report came from this lady, Frances Delmar. No picture or self-portrait is available on Frances, but this looks to be one of her paintings, so we'll roll with it. Delmar was an English lady who travelled the globe staying with native groups and chronicling her experiences. Native Americans was one of those. The extract I'm about to read is from her book, A Year Amongst the Maoris. I sped-read the book for brevity, concentrating on this subject of the video. To add overall context, though, to her narrative, she was largely complimentary. Delmar also, interestingly, touched on what happened to the other body parts of dead friends and foe. Thigh bones being manufactured into flutes and fishing hooks, teeth necklaces, that sort of thing. Righto, let's get into it. Get pens and paper ready to take notes. And just in case you want to leave your relatives in a rather tricky situation upon your demise, instructions in your will to cremate with the oven turned down a smidgen, your preferred final resting place now being the mantelpiece. Onwards.
In order to preserve them, the heads were subjected to a process of drying and cleaning called Mokomokai. After the removal of the brains, the head was then suspended on a pole over a group of heated stones. Around and over the stones, a mat was arranged in the form of a funnel, so to concentrate the heat upon the suspended head, and thus it was gradually dried or smoked. From time to time, it was removed to permit the humidity to dry off, then replaced and basted with fat. The drying process was sometimes affected by the exposure of the sun. It is said the lips were wide apart and the teeth and gum exposed only where the heads were of the enemies. In the case of relatives or friends, the lips were sewn together.
That's it, fine people. You're in business. Thanks for tuning in today. Thanks to all my new subscribers. It makes my day every time someone new subscribes. The delay in publishing a new video on this channel was that last weekend I was running around a 10-kilometre trek in Central Otago 10 times, mentally knackered. I'm here to stay though, and I will spot you round like a dunny roll. Bye for now.